breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
A warmer fuzzy hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by our good friend Rob Donaldson. He does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. We're going to be taking a look forward to the World Series. Can the Dodgers be stopped or even slowed down? Can they be forced to a game number 5, a game number 6? We have to explore that with him. We have to take a look at everything that we've been seeing in the postseason. How does he plan on betting the World Series as well? Rob has been joining me all throughout the season. He does such an amazing job taking a look at this great game of baseball, so we're going to have some fun with him. Here in the first segment, I'm going to get you guys a recap of everything that we saw in game number 7 of the ALCS between the Blue Jays and the Seattle Mariners. Unfortunately, no touch 'em all today because we really don't have an opener as I'm recording this on game number 1 in terms of the World Series. We shall see how things are going to be structured there, but we are going to get you guys set for the World Series. I might take a day or two off in between the lull that we have here right now and the World Series, but every single day that we've got games, I'm going to be with you guys with my picks and analysis like I have been all season long. So even though I don't have the picks and analysis today, have no fear, that is going to be there. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUnit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So, as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way, that is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. EdgeBoost is making sure that bettors are able to have access to their funds whenever and wherever. With EdgeBoost, 100% of gambling transactions do get approved. And when you go to EdgeBoost.bet, make sure you put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That'll get you a $1 for $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's take a look back at everything that we saw in Game 7 of these ALCS. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better and see what sort of shot the victor has of taking down the Dodgers in the World Series.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
By a count of 4-3, the Toronto Blue Jays move to the World Series. They get past the Seattle Mariners. This despite the fact that Shane Bieber, well, he had a fever for giving up hits in this one. He only makes it 3 2/3 innings. He allows 7 hits, only 2 runs. He did allow a home run in this one as it was Julio Rodriguez going deep. That was his 4th home run of the postseason. You would have a little bit later on Cal Raleigh, big dumper, his 5th home run of the postseason and his 65th overall of the season off of Louis Varland. Varland goes 1 1/3 innings. He gives up that 1 run, and that Raleigh home run comes in the 5th inning. The Mariners would not score after that as the bullpen certainly does their part. Anthony Dominguez, Kevin Gausman, yes, who is probably going to be pitching game number 1 of the World Series. Fortunately, there are some days off for the Toronto Blue Jays along the way. He was able to end a scoreless inning. Chris Bassett did as well, and then you got a pair of outside the bullpen scoreless from Jeff Hoffman. Not a ton of length from George Kirby, but he was able to go out there and do his part. He gives up 1 run over the course of 4 innings, and then from there, Brian Wu, he came in for 2 1/3 innings. He gives up 2 runs. There were inherited runners when George Springer, he had one of the most amazing home runs in that ballpark's history. We all remember the home run from Joe Carter many, many years ago. I don't know if it's going to be quite in that lore, but that was an absolutely massive shot for him. For Springer, by the way, he went out of that game number 5 due to a little bit of an injury. He took a ball right off the kneecap. He looked just fine for his 4th home run of the postseason as Edward Bizzardo gave that up 2/3 of an inning. He only gets charged for 1 earned run because Brian Wu, he put a pair of men on base. From there, you would have Andres Munoz lend his scoreless inning, and there were men on first and third with 1 out. So if you had the under, Andres Munoz was able to preserve that. But it is the Toronto Blue Jays who go to the World Series, and for this series, 5 out of the 7 games go over the total. This one was very, very close to going over the total. You had yourself a grand total of 18 hits and just a lot of men left on base. 7 men left on base on both sides, and we shall see what we're going to be getting in terms of a great World Series between the Blue Jays and the LA Dodgers. And how about if we take a look at that next with one of our good friends, Rob Donaldson. He does such great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. We're going to be breaking that down. We're going to be talking about how he's all just going to be betting the World Series series in general, and can this Blue Jays team give the Dodgers a little bit of a scare? That's up next right here on the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And yes, it is indeed always great to get this man aboard, as we've got Rob Donaldson on. He does such a great job with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at RobDFB. He does great work over at youtube.com/Rob Donaldson as well. I know that he has been joining me all year long. He has been doing such an incredible job taking a look at this great game of baseball. And Rob, it is always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Greg, it is always a pleasure, man. We've been talking about, just baseball in general since I think about February, you and I, and my goodness, man, we just watched an incredible electric Game 7. I feel terrible for the Mariners fans and for that team, but my goodness, the Blue Jays and that moment with George Springer, it just kind of feels like that is what encapsulates playoff baseball and why we love the sport. And I'm just happy to be talking about it with you tonight.
Oh, absolutely. And that was a wild game. And just what did you make out of it all? Because it looked like the Blue Jays were going to go down and they take a early deficit. Shane Bieber did not necessarily have it. And somehow, some way, they managed to get the job done, mainly because, in my opinion, the Seattle Mariners just did not do a good job of being able to cash in when they had their opportunities early with men in scoring position.
Yeah, it really was a series that I think kind of broke down to just those extra base hits with runners on base, because there were a lot of kind of individual singles that almost ended up kind of feeling like, hey, they got the job done, whether it was Josh Taylor, like an Addison Barger, or even Vladdy Guerrero in certain spots. But what really kind of took hold in this series between the Blue Jays and the Mariners was those kind of game-switching home runs, and I do think that's what actually gives the Blue Jays a chance against a team like the Dodgers. Is they've been living up to that moment. They've been hitting home runs off really tough righties and lefties from the Mariners bullpen and from their starting rotation all series long, and yeah, man, it was just a really, really fun game to watch.
And I am so glad that you mentioned that, because my next question was going to be, do you think that this bunch in the Toronto Blue Jays have any sort of chance against the Dodgers? Now, it is baseball, so yes, anything can happen, but man, this Dodgers team, it just feels like they have been a superpower, and I think any team in baseball is really up against it when they face off against them.
Yeah, and it's almost like one of those things where can the Blue Jays offense elevate past where I think the weakness will be in terms of their pitching, because I think what we got from Shane Bieber tonight is exactly what you have to expect from every single Blue Jays starter, maybe minus a guy like Kevin Gossman, who I think is truly going out there and showing repeatable ability of shoving on a night-to-night basis right now. But for the most part, when you look at their bullpen, when you look at their starting rotation, that just runs about 3 deep with Max Scherzer being in extreme asterisks, I really kind of look at that rotation and think, all right, well, that's obviously not going to get it done. That's going to be a 4 innings pitched, 5 innings pitched, 2 or 3 earned runs every single time out type of group. And so where does that leave the Blue Jays? I think if the Blue Jays are kind of living in the pocket of scoring, that 4 or 5 run mark, they are going to have a chance to, compete in this series. But ultimately, that's what it comes down to is Addison Barger, Ernie Clement, Andres Jimenez, that bottom end of the lineup, along with even a guy like a Dalton Varsho. I think those are the guys who are going to really need to show up, not the George Springers, Vladdies, Kirks that we kind of already expect to see that performance from.
And I think that that's so well said by you, as we do have one of our good friends in Rob Donaldson who does such a great job over at the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. He's joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show, and I think that that is really going to be the big key in this series. Who else, other than those main guys, are going to be able to step up for the Toronto Blue Jays? Because we have seen a lot of the young guys be able to do actually a relatively solid job here in the postseason. Trey Savage, he in game number 6 was able to give this Blue Jays team a nice shot in the arm. We saw Chris Bassett, he was able to take a hook, line, and sinker a little bit in that game number 7 as well. And I think that those are the sorts of guys that are going to need to step up, not just from a hitting perspective, but also from a pitching perspective.
100%. And I think also when you're talking about just the Blue Jays formula to win, I do give them a better chance than I gave the Phillies against the Dodgers. And the Phillies did some damage against that starting rotation from that series there, but it kind of felt like every single time the Dodgers trotted out a lefty, whether it was Blake Snell or Alex Vesia, or I can't even remember the other names that they threw out there in terms of that lefty, but even an Anthony Banda kind of had a lot of success against that Phillies lineup. And that can happen when you are trotting out Bryson Stott, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper. Those are your premium players. Well, guess what? When you're looking at Toronto and the premium guys that they have in this lineup, I feel like they're probably the most balanced in terms of the offensive attack that can actually get after a team like the Dodgers. And so ultimately, yeah, it is going to be a team effort. And I am going to be highlighting a guy like an Addison Barger at the bottom end because they are going to be trotting out a lot of righties. And he's somebody that as of late over the last 3 games has been ripping off a lot of hard hits. If that can continue, all of a sudden, maybe sprinkle like a World Series MVP future on a guy who's hitting 6 and 7 in this lineup, because I do think if the Toronto Blue Jays are able to pull this off, he's somebody that's doing damage in this upcoming series.
And a guy like a Nathan Lucas as well, I think is going to be so big. Not a guy that's really hitting a bunch of home runs or anything like that, but guy that has been very rock solid in the perspective of being able to move the line, find a way to be able to get on base, as well as we do have Rob Donaldson, who does such great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets, of joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show. And how do you take a look at the Dodgers pitching going into the series? Because I think that we both agree the best thing that the Blue Jays have going for them is the offense. They are number 1 in all baseball in terms of run creation ever since the All-Star break, but with the way that Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Blake Snell, Shohei Ohtani, and Tyler Glasnow are pitching, I don't know how much offense the Blue Jays are going to be able to deliver, because we saw in that Brewers series, and we know how good the Dodgers offense is themselves, every one of those games went under the total because the Brewers could just do absolutely nothing at the plate.
Yeah, and also when you're talking about, those 4 guys, add in Roki Sasaki on the back end, add in Alex Vesia on the back end, the 2 best relievers for the Dodgers are dudes who have 2 different types of handedness that you can attack parts of a lineup in that 9th inning, or maybe with, 8 and 2 outs. And so I think when you are looking at the Dodgers pitching in particular, it's really been all the playoff cycle. Who can the heck get after Blake Snell? Nobody's really been able to do it. I finally think this is a lineup that can get after Blake Snell, but now it's up to how do we get after Glasnow? How do we get after Ohtani? Yamamoto, I think, has struggled a little bit under that hard hit department, and so I do think the Blue Jays can actually get after him during his starts. But ultimately, yeah, the Blue Jays lineup is going to be tested beyond any sort of measure that they have so far, and that's not to kind of put down the Mariners rotation and their bullpen, because, yeah, I didn't really like Kirby in this series and a lot of his starts, and I did kind of feel like even the Logan Gilbert outings were fadeable, and Luis Castillo, as great as he was during the playoff cycle, always kind of felt like somebody who was very, very volatile and under the hood. But when you are looking at the Dodgers, not a lot of volatility, whether it's under the hood or on the surface. And so, yeah, the Blue Jays are going to have to string together hits, get those walks, and hopefully luck into kind of a 2-run or 3-run bomb in a lot of these games.
Yeah, that is a very, very tall task for the Toronto Blue Jays. And do you think that they can actually force it to go 6 games or a 7th game? Or do you think that this might be a 4 or 5 game series like the Dodgers have been doing all postseason long?
Well, I think we're going to know right out the gate. And I say that because although this Blue Jays offense has been humming, and that's been really the strong point, can the pitching not get shelled? And I think when you are looking at how the Brewers attacked the Dodgers lineup, it was unafraid. They were getting after them in early counts, But obviously, as we just saw Shohei Ohtani lift off for 3 home runs, just because you're throwing strikes and going after guys doesn't mean that's going to be conducive to success. Although the swing and miss stuff is there for the Blue Jays, it really is going to come down to, can they just go a little bit above 5 innings pitched, give up that under 3 earned run mark per outing? I really don't see that being the case. And so right out the gate, we're going to learn if the Blue Jays can score 5 or 6, because that's kind of the run margin that they're going to have to live within to actually win 4 games in this series.
Yep, and I mean, we are saying it and it sounds very difficult. It's going to be actually harder for them to be able to do so. As Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's the best bets, he's joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show, and that leads me into this. Obviously, baseball is situational. Momentum is as good as your next day's starting pitcher, and it is going to depend upon the rotations, who's all going in game 1, game 2, what have you. But is there any way that you're going to be looking to attack this series? Maybe there's something that stands out to you, or maybe there's just a future/series bet that's going to be standing out to you.
I think if you are going to take a little bit of a shot on the Blue Jays in this series, like I just kind of mentioned, I think an Addison Barger type of guy in the bottom part of the order, maybe even an Andres Jimenez, would be like an interesting World Series MVP future stab. That might be something that I do at a very, very small wager amount, because I don't think you have to go all full bore on that type of play. But game by game, I am going to be looking at what the team total overs are for the Toronto Blue Jays, because I think because of the names that the Dodgers are trotting out there with Snell, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Ohtani, yeah, obviously due to have been lights out all year long and all postseason long, that is. But ultimately, if we're getting a good enough number with this type of offense that I think is balanced top to bottom and has actually 9 dudes that can really rip off a hard hit at any given moment, all of a sudden, that 2 or 3 runs per game that might have been difficult for, say, the Brewers against this Dodgers team might be a little bit easier. And we might get some inherent value taking those team total overs on the Blue Jays. But from an actual game by game standpoint, I don't know if I'm going to be playing a lot more than just those team totals, maybe some sparing overs, and also just attacking that first 5 market.
And I think that that's a good way to be able to go about it. And something that has been great for this podcast has been getting you aboard, Rob. You're such a wealth of knowledge with regards to this great game of baseball. You've been following it all season long, and you, much like myself, while handicapping the World Series, are getting set for some incredible college basketball action as well. So we'll have to get people at home know it's all on tap for you, and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, hey, Greg, the season's winding down. I've had such an enjoyable time, talking ball with you ever since, we turned the calendar into this 2025 calendar year. But, for those who want to follow my Major League Baseball bets night by night in the World Series, Twitter/X at RobDFB. And as always, Greg, I appreciate having me on, man.
It is always great to be able to get Rob aboard. He does such an excellent job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of baseball. Also doing some nice work on the football front as well. He's a man of many, many talents, and he always shows those talents when he's on this podcast. So big thanks to Rob for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And if you do like sharing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM. They mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way, that is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I'm going to try to keep this going every single day. There might be a day or two in which I do take a little bit of a hiatus because we do have a few days in between the World Series here, so I might take 1 or 2 days off. But that said, every single day in which we have games, I'm going to get you guys picks and analysis for every single game, every single day. That is my commitment to you guys, and I am in the meantime getting set for the college basketball season. So for those of you guys that like the Coast to Coast Hoops podcast, you're able to tune in there, and we're going to get you guys all set there. But I appreciate you guys tuning in today, and I will be back with you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you.